So before I get started on this, I must acknowledge I'm very late with this video, or this series of videos. Definitely something I planned on doing a couple weeks ago now, but had quite a bit of work travel, personal travel, birthdays, Christmas, etc. So I hope you understand. But yeah, I posted a question about a month or so ago on Twitter, X, whatever, to see if anyone really wanted to see about or learn about my path to Formula One, what it was like working in Formula One, how much you get paid in Formula One, what are some of the skills that you require to make it there, the pathway, and then also ultimately how you succeed, how you're able to thrive and sustain, I guess, life in such a grueling sport. Competition engineering, as I remember Chris Aylett coining it. So yeah, I wanted to pose a bit of a video series. This one will serve as a kind of a prologue. One that kind of explains maybe my initial motivations, where I come from, why I went the route I went, and then kind of leading into my master's degree at Oxford Brookes, let's say, in video 2, and ultimately what it was like, I guess, during the records are meant to be broken, but let's call it the most impressive run in modern Formula One history up to this point. So yeah, let's get started. So I come from Miami, Florida. Lived here most of my life. I'm here on Miami Beach right now, walking around, trying not to get ran over by cars as I film this. Let's see. So Miami is known as a sunny place for shady people, right? Tourist town full of very unusual characters. Not a lot of industry, not a lot of examples of, let's say, people working in the field I wanted to work in, making it to the top echelon of engineering, or let's say automotive engineering. So like any good South Floridian with decent grades, I decided I was going to go to the University of Miami because the application at Georgia Tech was simply too difficult to fill out. And also, I didn't think I had the grades for it at the time. Now, up until this point, I mean, I was infatuated with race cars, open wheel race cars specifically. Now I'm talking like, since I just turned 36, so dating myself a bit, but be watching Speed Vision because I couldn't sleep in the middle of the night, catching things like Suzuka Friday practice, or any of the really early sessions for some of the European rounds. So I was always just infatuated with Formula One. I liked IndyCar because we could actually go see IndyCar races here in Miami, but what I quickly realized after seeing the cars were kind of spec, it didn't really offer me the excitement that Formula One did, especially after really actually my desire to work in Formula One was solidified once the CART IRL split happened, because up until that point, CART had I think like 4 chassis, 4 engine manufacturers. It seemed like a mini F1, right? It was kind of cool. It seemed like every year they were doing something new and different. So when that all went down and CART started to break up, it really just forced me to just be infatuated 24/7 with F1. I remember some of my early stories that people wrote about were like being in the 8th grade and coming in Monday morning and speaking to my friend Andre about the F1 race, and we were in like, or I don't know, earth science class or something like that, and just remembering all the other students kind of looking at us like we were speaking Chinese, like it just nothing registered besides to the two of us when it came to this F1 thing. So yeah, long story short, I go to University of Miami, study mechanical engineering. I had these aspirations of making it into the automotive industry, but F1 was always the goal, even at that age. It was never like, oh, I just want to design pickup trucks. It was always like, I just want to get to Formula One, however it happens. I didn't really start kind of placing that path until I made it to probably like my junior year at UM. Started applying for internships. I remember rushing out of class to check on an application, call up like Red Bull Racing, and then just reach the HR department, spend like $20 on a 5-minute call, and have them just say, oh yeah, we didn't get your application, or oh yeah, we don't, we're not employing foreigners or anything like that, and just being kind of devastated. And then one fateful day, in the middle of the night, I think I was mad at my girlfriend at the time because she was being a shithead and telling me that I couldn't achieve my dreams of working in Formula One or designing F1 cars. And I remember Googling American F1 engineers, and I kid you not, Google says at the top of the screen, did you mean Canadian F1 engineers? I was like, all right, click it. And I click it and I read an article about my good friend now, Gavin Ward, who was a Red Bull Racing, I guess he would have been like a graduate at the time, just like 2010. Yeah, he would have been a graduate engineer. And read his whole story, saw he went to Oxford Brookes, and just was like so infatuated because I was like, oh my God, he's from North America, that's close enough. He made it to exactly where I want to go. He's on a team that's competing for the World Championship right now. This is amazing. So, like any good, crazy 21, 22-year-old, I found Gavin on LinkedIn and I started sending him a barrage of messages. Found him on Facebook. And if I'm honest, I'm sure most people would have probably just blocked me at that point. But Gavin responded. He gave me some really good insight. Explained his path, what he did, what he studied, some of the competencies, some of the different jobs that he was working on. And it just made total sense. So the main thing that he drilled into my head at that point was, I got to get to Europe. So Gavin went to Oxford Brookes University. He only did undergraduate. I think he did, undergraduate there. He didn't do a master's. And that sparked, since I had already graduated from undergrad, I was kind of like, okay, well, I need to see about this whole master's program and see if I'll still make it happen over there. So that was the first time I was really exposed to an actual pathway that could get me to F1. So I graduated college the first time in the middle of global economic crisis, which was great. It was horrible for every single millennial out there. Even engineers, which most people thought were like insulated from economic slowdown and the issues that were happening, we weren't. And it definitely was, it definitely was tough. So basically 2009, 2010, there were no internships, co-ops, unless you were, especially for a school like where I was coming from, University of Miami, which I'll tell you right now, doesn't really offer any industrial connection for students to exploit. There's no pipeline to car companies, no pipeline to I guess anything besides FPL, and at the time it was I think it was CSX, train company. It's like I didn't want to be a train engineer. I thought that was ridiculous. So yeah, if you're from South Florida, like you just had to leave, and then you had to pray that the company you wanted to work for, let's say an actual industry, was willing to take a chance on you because you weren't coming from one of their feeder schools. And that was tough for me. I remember applying for Ford, Chevy, Ford, GM, Fiat Chrysler, all those guys, rejected from all of them. And then luckily through my dad, I got connected to a chief engineer at Honda R&D in Ohio. So the sidebar was I kind of hated American cars at this time. I was like tuning my Nissan 240SX. I was like really into Japanese car culture. So I was like, oh, Honda, that sounds kind of cool, right? And the kicker was Honda still had quite a presence in global motorsport and had previously obviously supplied Formula One. And I was like, well, I sat there scratching my beard and saying, well, you know, if Honda ever does go back to Formula One, I'm going to be right there. You know, if they've been there before a couple eras, and they had a shot to go back. So I apply, get a job, Honda R&D as an engine design engineer. So up until that point, I didn't know if Honda actually designed any engines in the United States. They had a group of about 30 design engineers in my department that were in charge of basically like making small changes to the engines which were being sold to the US market. So I was kind of in a cool spot. You know, I was learning about, let's say, an automotive company, which I quite liked, and I liked their engines. So I guess the backstory about Honda is I kind of get into this group that's full of like mostly Ohio or Midwest bred, corn-fed Americans, with a sparse group of what they call J-staff, which were overseas assignment Japanese engineers that came from Honda in Tochigi. And it was quite a battle because the American staff were like, oh, we're good engineers, we want to design our own bespoke engine, like, you should let us do this. And the Japanese are like, no, we don't think you guys are strong enough technically to do this, right? So it was almost as if the American group was quite captive in that regard, just doing what the Japanese, the J staff, said, you know, and did. And I don't really think that was actually the case. The J staff are just kind of like us, you know, and when you treat them as separate engineers or like a different race or like aliens in compared to what we were, they weren't going to really reward you for that. So what I started doing, because I was so like into Honda's history and racing, is I started looking up in the Honda library all the old F1 books they had. They had these really, really beautiful F1 era books that they created to showcase everything they did. So I'd read these books in this little quiet library. I'd kind of escape from my desk because I didn't want to do any of the work I was doing. And I'd see the names of the people, all Japanese staff. I'd see the photos of them in the 80s with like McLaren and with Williams. And I'd be like, that guy sits like 3 desks over from me. This is cool. Like, he's right here. Let me ask him about Formula One, because I'm so like jacked up about someday getting to F1, because basically I just didn't want to die in Central Ohio. So once I started letting the J staff know of my plans, my grandmaster plan to move to Europe, design Formula One cars, they kind of said, well, hey, you know, that's quite interesting. We'd like to help you, like to give you some guidance, et cetera, et cetera. So the funny bit is, while this was all happening, the new rule set was coming into place. So this would have been like 2012. Yeah. 2012, I think F1 announced that they were switching up to the V6 hybrid engine formula. This was really early. This is when the likes of people like Ross Brawn got their single cylinder head starts on everyone, and basically solidified Mercedes' dominance through my era, at least the first, we'll call it the first 2 to 3 years before we really got on top of the chassis and had to make some huge chassis gains, but I digress. So that's when this whole thing started. So after seeing this, what I had learned at the time of being at Honda about 1.5 years is the American staff found that by making kind of very unusual PowerPoint proposals that offered like a real interesting possibility, or, you know, entry into a certain sector or even a motorsport program, and convincing enough for the J staff, they'd get budget for these programs. So me and my buddy Kevin Danford, we decided that we were going to create this ambitious proposal for Honda to re-enter Formula One, and but only as an engine supplier, right? Because we knew about the $1 billion a year they were spending prior to leaving. All that was well documented internally. And so we created this really, really detailed proposal to try to get Kevin, who was in engine test, and me in engine design to be the first two non-Japanese members of the Honda F1 engine design team. Send us to Japan for 2 or 3 years, learn the expertise, bring back the know-how to the Ohio base, and grow and develop the workforce here in the US based on our overseas assignment. So we created this proposal quite early. It was almost as soon as the announcement came out, we were working on it. So I would say probably within 3 to 4 months, we had something that was like, we were circulating. So I had given it at the time to, basically I knew my boss was an asshole. He still was an asshole up until the day I left. And I honestly, it's probably for good reason. So instead of making this really drawn out PowerPoint in my nights and weekends and handing it to my boss and being like, hey, this is what we should do. It's a really good idea. I just went around him and I started giving it to the J staff and then the leadership of Honda R&D. I gave it all the way to the president, which was at the time Eric Berkman. So Berkman was a cool dude, another Ohio guy, but he had worked in HPD, I think, for a bit at that point. So he had really intimate knowledge about the spend that Honda was putting forth towards motorsport projects. And basically when Honda was in F1, every single vehicle that ran off the assembly line, when they were assessing the profitability of the vehicle, they would tack on basically a 10-cent surcharge to every vehicle globally sold, which would go to fund Formula One. I would say it's 10 cents. Maybe it was $1.20. Somewhere in this range. It's like single dollars. Every single vehicle, and that would go into funding the Formula One budget for the, at the time, defunct Honda Racing F1 team, which was based in Brackley. So a lot of the old heads there actually really had knowledge of this previous era of F1. In fact, there was 2 specific Americans that actually worked OAP, and they went to Brackley, I think in vehicle dynamics, and they had their various opinions about working in F1. They hated it for whatever reason. I would say that I was able to totally prove them wrong, or at least prove their assumptions wrong that they were trying to give me over what it would be like, but I digress. So anyways, we created this massive proposal, and give it to Eric Berkman. He sends it to Japan. He sends it to I remember seeing the email. He sent it to like the Honda Japan president, and this was pretty early in the whole process. He sends it to this guy, and I remember getting the Japanese email back that Mr. Berkman forwarded to me, and it said something to the extent of, thank you, Eric-san. This proposal is very meaningful. If Honda re-enters Formula One, this will be the type of path that we will undertake the project on. So of course I'm fucking ecstatic. I'm like, holy shit, did I just change the trajectory of Honda racing forever? Did I do that? I had, and I don't have the, I say this, Kevin probably has a PowerPoint somewhere. So I could show it. I'd probably get in trouble for showing it, but it was really well done. It kind of showed how, because we had insider knowledge about the powertrain roadmap for Honda for the next 10 or 12 years at that time. So we're talking 2012 on till 2022. And everything was downsize hybrid, downsize turbo hybrid, downsize turbo. And it all matched up to what Formula One was doing. And I was like, see, you can port this technology from F1 into our road cars, help gain thermal efficiency, help boost the know-how of your American engineers, blah, blah, blah. So everything lined up, perfect storm, looked beautiful. And now I had confirmation from Honda Japan, the top of the top, saying that if they re-entered F1, this is how they're going to do it. So I was through the roof, right? So anyways, my asshole boss caught wind of what I was doing, going around his back, sending these crazy proposals to the moon, because I didn't tell him that I went straight to the president. Mind you, Honda R&D Americas had a open floor plan. So like the president's desk was no different than my desk. They all wore the same clothing that we wore. You could literally just walk up to them and be like, hey, how's it going? There's no doors on anything. It's just this massive open floor plan. So it kind of, in my opinion, it brought on open communication. But when you work for old Midwesterners, they're not exactly, they don't like having, let's say, moderately decent to not very good average young engineers approaching the president of the company, talking about crazy lofty motorsport plans instead of worrying about their normal work. So he sat me down, was kind of grumpy, and he was like, how do you plan on being the the first American to design a F1 engine for Honda or work on that project? You haven't even been here for 10 years. You barely know what you're doing. Like, you just started. Like, you've been here 2 years only. And, you need to be here for 10, 20 years before we even think about sending you to such a crazy project, blah, blah, blah. I just remember, like, being in tears at the end of that meeting, right? It's like a Friday night. I'm in tears. I'm fucking pissed. Just really not happy. And it was already about, like, May or June. So we're, like, entering summer at that point. And I remember leaving 6:30 or 7 Friday night, going home, licking my wounds, pissed off, just being like, I got this good job, but like I want so much more for my life. I want to like accomplish something that's truly great, and I don't think I'm going to do that here in Central Ohio. So a very not well thought out decision, because I was like 23 at the time. I come in Monday morning, go to my boss's desk, and send a resignation notice. So I quit. And after he sat me down asking why I quit, I said, look, I'm going to go be an F1 engineer in a year, regardless of what you think. And that was that. Now, this seems like such a crazy story, or at least it seems too good to be true. It was 100% real, everything that happened. I will say, though, that my bosses, my lead engineer, so Steve, forgot his last name, Steve, and the boss guy, I forget his name. They were in every right to tell me I was a bad engineer at the time, or that I wasn't ready for such an assignment, because I truly wasn't. And this is where, my opinion, I was behind the 8 ball because of the university I chose, and the pathway that it took for me to get into automotive engineering. So University of Miami did not prepare me for anything. I didn't know how to take notes. I had no real applied engineering skills or applied physics skills, which so many of the undergrads that started with me at Honda in the same cohort had. They came from Purdue, they came from Indiana, they came from Michigan, and these guys had all had like 2 internships each. They had all worked on Formula SAE or Baja or something like that. They've turned wrenches, they've used CAD extensively. I had none of it. So I get there, all I had was real life hands-on experience wrenching on cars, my cars. I swapped engines, did wiring harnesses. So I knew my way around a car really well at that age. I had worked on open wheel race cars thanks to my friend Sadat. I worked on his SECA Formula Atlantic team for a couple summers up to that point. So I made my own internships. I got my way around, let's say, motorsport and road cars on my own, while everyone else really had the support of, we'll call it teachers and, people, mentors and things of that nature to give them the right path, the complete path and the robust path to an automotive engineering career, which I was just trying to fight my way tooth and nail into. So year one at Honda was like a total waste. I probably should have got fired. In fact, they didn't pit me, but they definitely sat me down a couple times. Like, you know, and I credit Steve, my lead engineer, for this. He really helped me learn how to do two things: proper note taking. Give me a notepad, and he's like, everything I tell you, you write down. And I'm like, okay, got it. And then the second thing is, he instilled this thing. He's, you know, because he, instead of suggesting or thinking that I got everything that he was trying to get me to retain, he started asking me, like, do you understand? Can you tell me exactly what you want me to do? And then I started kind of regurgitating all the information he provided to me, and it allowed me to solidify my understanding of the task at hand. And I started getting better. I really did. So at this point, Honda's taught me how to use CATIA V6, how to do 2D drawings, assembly drawings, bill of materials, how to do collaborative design, how to have proper note taking, all the components of an engine, most of the components of a vehicle, and then a lot of the requirements that most of the parts of a vehicle have to go through in each of their various sectors. So I had a really good base knowledge. How I got there was difficult. It was trial by fire is the best way to put it, but I made it happen. So here I am, 2 weeks out from quitting. Didn't have much in the way of money saved up, but I had a plan. So I applied to Oxford Brookes the year prior, and then I had them waitlist me because they accepted me. And this year I was like, okay, don't waitlist me, I'm coming. I'll see you guys in September. And we set that all up. And at the time I had a 93 NSX, white with a black top, 5-speed. It's amazing, I loved it. Sold that, sold everything I owned. And I was renting at the time, so I didn't really have I think I had a bed and a desk and a dresser as far as furniture goes. Sold everything I had, TV, PlayStation, packed 4 bags, and by September I was on a plane to London. So a couple things worth understanding at this point. I gave up a job that was paying me, my tax returns were average 85 grand a year for the first 2 years. This was from a base salary of 52,000, and I think that got up to 55,000 the second year, and the rest was just overtime. So the reason we got so much overtime was obviously we had a lot of work to do, so it'd run into the evenings. But Japanese work culture kind of necessitates that you stay super late, even if you probably don't need to. So we'd all stay really late. And besides that, trying to communicate with HCT in Japan, we had to take video conferences middle of the night, basically, and that just bumped up our overtime. So I got this job that's paying me 80 grand a year. I'm living in Central Ohio. Expenses are low. Sports car is cool. At this point, I've already started figuring out how to maintain my body. I was working out a lot. I was powerlifting, lost a bunch of weight. I was feeling good about myself. And I throw all this away for the chance, not even a job, but just the chance to possibly, in a year's time from there, be able to interview and be successful in getting a job somewhere on the Formula One grid. That's all it was. It was just a chance. So the worst part about all this is, while I was going to go do my master's at Oxford Brookes, the UK government had removed the post-master's 1-year work visa program that was in place. So I didn't even have a chance to get a job. I had to get sponsored at this point. So I need to convince a company that I'm better than everything available in Europe. I'm that good. I'm the bee's knees. I'm here. They need to spend 10 to 12,000 pounds on an immigration lawyer, get me my work visa, and then basically keep me up to a reasonable amount of pay at that point as well to support that whole endeavor. So, man, the cards are stacked against me when I'm hopping on that plane from Miami to fly to London. So that's the first part of the story. Stay tuned to part 2, which I guess we'll call Oxford Brookes. and interview processes.